Nelson Leith, rocking the political establishment. There is a pollution corrupting our civilization. America's political discourse is inundated with lies. Some of these lies come from the right, some from the left. Some come from activists, some from published pundits, or from news outlets. Now, these lies are not merely the result of differences of opinion. They are designed to make a profit, either financial or political. Now, the business model of news outlets and publishers varies. Sometimes the reader or viewer pays directly for the service, but even when the news is founded on an advertising model, there is an economic exchange between the business and those who get their information from it. The media entity provides information, and the readers and viewers look at the advertisements in order to get the information. The exchange is indirect, but economically and legally very real. Ad-driven news would not survive without an audience that believes the news is accurate. Likewise, professional activists would not survive if their supporters did not hand over their donations and votes because they believed that the statistics and other information presented by the activists were factual. To knowingly offer inaccurate information in exchange for material support is, to put it bluntly, fraud. Now that's a harsh charge, so let's go through the elements of fraud. Now, first of all, the source has to make a material misrepresentation and either know that it's false or at least not know whether or not it's true. Now this, I believe we can agree, is commonplace. The bookshelves are full of exposés revealing in details the lies of this or that network or commentator on both sides. Now, all of these people cannot be telling the truth. By necessity, someone is misrepresenting the facts. I contend that there are a lot of people misrepresenting the facts. Secondly, the source has to intend that his or her lies are relied on by the reader or viewer. Now, except in the case of clearly satirical publications like the Weekly World News, I think we can reasonably assume that most sources of news and punditry intend to be taken seriously. Thirdly, the viewers must be ignorant of the fraud being perpetrated against them, and they must be justified in believing it. Again, this is clearly the case. If Americans cannot be expected to rely on information presented as news, or on books sold as nonfiction, or on an activist statistics that are presented as scientific research, what can they be expected to rely on? Now, lastly, the victim of fraud has to suffer some injury. One injury suffered by the defrauded viewer of false news and dishonest commentary is to their property rights, when they make bad economic choices based on the false information they've gotten from whatever source. When you surrender your hard-earned cash because you are relying on a misrepresentation spread by some dishonest newsman or advocate, you've been deprived of your property against your informed consent. Another injury suffered by viewers is to their rights as citizens to a representative government, when they make bad electoral choices based on false information they've received. Representing a policy or a politician in a material way as something other than what it, he, or she truly is represents an attempt to rob the audience of their American right to informed consent to the powers of their government. There is clearly fraud being committed. Caveat emptor, let the buyer beware, was a motto of the economically primitive Roman militocracy, and it has no place in the economically sophisticated American republic, which is driven by democratic and free market processes that rely on trust. Without trust, without that implicit guarantee of honesty, the virtues of our civilization fall to dust and our freedoms and prosperity crumble with them. Now, some might argue that there is a First Amendment issue here. But there is no First Amendment right to commit fraud. News outlets and others do not have the right to profit by offering people the truth and giving them truthiness instead. Deliberate lies are not protected speech. Slander is a crime. Libel is a crime. Fraud is a crime. Comfort propaganda sold to readers and viewers as if it were the news is a crime. It is not a First Amendment right to defraud your audience for the advertising dollars they pull in or the votes they cast on Election Day. It is a crime, and it should be zealously prosecuted. We should drive these money changers out of the temple of our republic. Now, I don't advocate fining people out of business, and I don't advocate a system where massive awards would attract profiteering lawsuits. Money should not be the penalty paid. Confession should be, partly because money is too easy for crooks to come by. Far too often, we allow people to buy their way out of admitting their dishonesty through cash settlements, enabling them to continue spewing the pollution of falsehood into our social atmosphere. No, I advocate letting the free market deal with lies. By requiring so-called news outlets and pundits and activists who have been found guilty of defrauding their audience in a courtroom and according to strict and conservative rules of evidence that would protect against flimsy and trummed-up charges, but news outlets, pundits, and activists who have been found guilty of mass fraud should have to announce this finding to their audience as prominently as they presented the fraud in the first place. Honest journalists and activists do this on their own when they discover a mistake or when they recognize a fraud in their employ. The only way to clean the filth out of our political discourse is to make the dishonest ones announce to their audience, "We were caught lying and we tried to cover it up," and then let the audience decide if they want to keep believing. That's the moral way, that's the free market way, and that's the American way.